folks, welcome back to Flat Irons Tuning. We are here in a parking lot, and in fact, we're here in a parking lot with our 2024 WRX. And as you might guess from the remnants of snow and ice in this parking lot, turns out yesterday we had a good deal of snow, and this parking lot was just covered with snow and ice. And what is any good Subaru person going to do when you see that but go out into the parking lot and explore the limits of your car in slick conditions? And that's exactly what we did. But it turns out that the camera that we were using to record the audio and the main discussion of what we were doing, well, that all got lost. So I'm here to tell you that we did all this, and so we can get to that footage. And you didn't really miss a whole lot. It basically was the beginnings. Why were we doing this? Well, we were doing this because, like we talked about in our podcast about drifting, well, if you want to explore what your car is going to do in slick conditions or when it loses traction at the limit, that sort of thing, the best place to do that is basically an empty parking lot when it's slick, like covered with ice and snow like it was yesterday. And so initially we got in the car, we tested out the brakes and discovered that, well, yeah, these tires, they have very, very poor traction in the snow, and you hit the brakes, ABS kicks in, you're just sliding along for the ride. But then we played around with driving with the traction control on and turning the car, how much does it slide? And the answer was quite a lot. But then after that, we turned the traction control off and started to play a little bit more with the limits of traction. And that's when things got interesting. And fortunately, the camera did pick all of that up. So we're going to be able to jump to that here now in a second. But before we do that, I just want to say, if you like this content, please be sure to like, subscribe, check out flatironstuning.com so we can keep coming back and making this stuff for you. But without further ado, let's see what happens when you turn the traction control off in this and this whole parking lot is covered with ice and snow. Subaru in snow. This is what sets Subarus apart. Subaru folks, they see snow and they get excited to get out and get in their car and drive around. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, so a lot of ABS and it slid for a bit. We do not have a lot of traction. Big brakes, big grabby brakes in snow and ice like this. That's where like having really fine control and a delicate touch is important, because otherwise you just lock everything up and then you just slide. We're going to see what we can learn here, getting in slick conditions, so now we're going to find out what the tendencies of the car are. But we definitely know that the tires, not so much grip. Lots of ABS, holy cow. Okay, wow. We're just going to keep on going. Wow. I was not pressing hard. Okay. So it's like it gives you a bit of room to play. Let's see what happens let's see if we can turn it off.
And how off is off?
Yeah. So now it says traction control is off.
Okay, that's more what I was expecting.
But it's still...
And it's doing some funky stuff.
Well, no, it came on, but it gives you more window. But it's still there. So even with the traction control off, it's still doing something. Let's see. There. It feels okay.
Huh.
So it's when the rear comes out, so it's when it starts to rotate around and I counter steer is when the traction control still comes on.
That's interesting when it turns off and we're still
Yep.
So it's definitely steering input based.
It seems like, because here I'm sliding, nothing. Brakes, ABS, so no traction control. There.
Yep.
It's when the counter steer that the traction control comes on. Like figuring out what the car is going to do, and in these circumstances, I think that it's not bad that the car is doing these little things.
Sure.
It's kind of keep you in control, keep you doing what you want to do. But it's to be aware that it's there. So there, instead of steering, I was on the brake, and it kept rotating.
Yep.
Whereas if I would have, if I'm on the throttle,
counter steered and been on an added
the
throttle,
traction control, you actually have control of the car. So that was one of the questions that came out of the first video, is like, can you lose more control of the car if you get off the throttle? Maybe, but in a lot of cases, I think you actually, because see there, I'm coming off. Like even getting on the brakes, sometimes you actually just slide more.
Yeah.
So if I'm on the throttle, the car is not sliding as much, and then the traction control is doing more to intervene. When the car's moving and you're on the throttle and you're giving steering input, then the traction control has an ability to kind of intervene to try and help you get the car to do what you want it to do. But then when you tap the brakes, like,
It just goes.
that's just it.
It actually does rotate just with a little tap of the brakes.
Or steering input or throttle.
Yeah.
Getting a feel for, even with ABS, like, there are points where, like, if the car is doing something, the ABS is engaging, but the car is just sliding. You're a passenger at that point. I kind of like, even with the traction control off, it's still there, but I think it's helpful.
I'm surprised by how much it actually rotates, by how much the back really gets around with just what seems like fairly slight inputs.
I think there's difference in traction, because like right here seems to be really slick. Like,
Yeah, true.
now there's no ABS, we're just sliding. Like that was like no traction. So this part is really slick right here. But over there, it seems like it's not quite as slick. But yeah, the more I get into the throttle, the more the car slides, and then you get on the brake, and the more we're just a passenger.
Sweet.
So that's where, you know, control of the throttle, control of the brake, having a clear picture of how the nannies are going to intervene for your benefit or not,
Right?
is helpful. Full lock.
Oh my gosh.
There's just not quite enough stick 'em to get the car to really do what we want it to do.
Huh.
But then, you know, it's not always going to do exactly what you want it to do. It will be helpful sometimes, but not all the time. Going towards the curb. Passenger. Okay. It really does feel like the tendencies of the car are to be like, it'll oversteer. Like, you get on the throttle, it's going to oversteer. The traction control kind of helps bring it back in. You can use the throttle to get it to rotate, and some better tires would be wonderful. Yeah, well.
Just steering. A little bit.
Steering.
Man. Oh yeah.
And now we're drifting. But that was fun. I mean, it's like, it's very low speed and reasonably controlled.
It feels very different than my 2014 WRX. While I would say mine has a tendency to understeer. Yeah, exactly. This one definitely feels like it has more of a tendency to oversteer, which is pretty awesome.
Ooh.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the nannies are angry. What's interesting is I kind of feel like the nannies are, like, there's a lot of, we're making them mad, but they're really doing their job.
Yeah?
Curb, curb, curb.
Perfect. Parked up.
Yeah. Going for the ride. That's all you can do.
That is definitely interesting. No traction there.
Didn't seem to be. I think the next step, the next curiosity that I would have is like, all right, disconnect the rear sway bar and see what that does.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there it's not rotating, comes around on power.
Yeah.
And now there's starting to be more traction there because we've worn out the snow. Okay. It's interesting. It's like staying on the power, not getting on the brake, letting the traction control kind of do what it wants to do.
It's not happy with you, but the car is going straight.
Yeah. You still have some tools, like even if you're sliding and the traction control is working for you versus just getting on the brakes and potentially locking up all the tires.
Totally.
You can see here.
Yeah.
What do you think, Carter? Anything else we should explore? Or?
Feels good to me.
Okay. There's a high level of control
Yes.
When you're sliding, I think like on dirt, like it would not nearly come around as fast, and so maybe this setup on dirt would be way better.
Sure.
Like you get into a dirt parking lot, like for autocross, like this might be like the perfect sweet spot. We're gonna have to explore and find out.
Yes, indeed. So much fun.
Cannot argue with how much fun that was. If you have a parking lot in a Subaru, I mean, it's like a moth to a flame.